You know, what the hell is up with most simulation games nowadays? I mean, whatever happened to the simplicity that the genre used to hold? Most modern simulation games just seem like they're too complex with too much going on, or they're just fucking weird. I just want a basic sandbox style game where I can sit back, relax, and let my imagination run wild. And you know what? I think I have a game for just that. An older game. Let's go. Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. This is a game in the genre that still stands out to this day. Now, let's talk about the game series in general really quick. The first two entries in the series were extremely popular in the early 2000s, although I never actually played either of them growing up. The third game was my first and my last experience with the series, as I still have yet to play the newest title, Roller Coaster Tycoon World, which released in 2016 and was apparently a disaster of a game. My experience with Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 dates back to October 2009. I was in 7th grade and I was currently living in Colorado, where we had a massive snowstorm which led to 2 snow days. Now, while watching random YouTube videos during those days, I stumbled upon a few different videos of people who had recreated Disneyland rides within a video game. Yep, you guessed it, that was this game. Now, we'll talk more about that later, but I remember thinking that that was the coolest thing. I just had to try it out for myself. So, a couple days later, I went out and bought the game after the snowstorm had passed, and I was immediately hooked. So, Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 is a sandbox and simulation game where you get to create and run your own theme park. The newest addition that this game featured over the first two was the 3D mode, which was honestly one of the best features of the game as it allowed you to watch your rides in action. So now, we can rock out as we ride the Tumbler. Oh yeah! The graphics were definitely an improvement over the first two games as well. I mean, the people look like shit, but everything else isn't bad. And the music isn't horrible either. You get a good selection of catchy stock music which you can have play on your park's loudspeakers. Like this track. JJ's House, a classic. If you do get tired of that though, you can actually import your own tracks as well, which is super awesome. Now the main mode in this game is Career Mode, which I honestly never played much compared to Sandbox Mode. In Career Mode, you pick from a list of different maps and you can unlock several more later. You start out with a somewhat built park and you continue from there with many restrictions on what you can do with your park. You basically have to try and improve your initial startup park by achieving goals which will then allow you to move forward in the game. There are goals for each tier starting with Apprentice. Completing these goals will then eventually allow you to beat that map. And speaking of the maps, there's actually quite a few even when just starting out. Each map is different from the other, and as you go down the list, you'll find that they become more complex with their rides and scenery. Like this movie studio one. I think it's safe to assume that it's probably inspired and maybe even a rip-off of Universal Studios, but anyway, let's check it out. Pretty cool. There's also a Wild West map and this weird Taj Mahal India type deal, which has no rides. Just water. Moving on. The point of the pre-built maps is to basically give you a starting point that you can add on to and sort of continue with the theme that was already given. Like this one. Fright Night. I know Halloween was yesterday, but we're still in the Halloween spirit, right? Let's make something spooky. This here is the Fright Night map. Pretty eerie already, but we could probably do more with it. But before we get into that, let's talk about some other things besides the rides that we can do with each map. There's food stalls, drink stalls, shops, and amenities obviously, as any theme park kinda needs those things to operate and provide for the guests. But we also have special features like terrain tools, which allow us to form some crazy shit with the landscape, like mountains, holes, and even waterfalls. They're pretty cool. To create the overall environment and look at your park, you'll get plenty of scenery options including plants, rocks, and even specific scenery items. You have all your normal classic theme park scenery options like dinosaurs, pirates, tombstones, a rocket ship, a cannon, a giant ant, okay, a giant die, alright, a candy cane? A fucking candy cane in an amusement park? What? There's also some special scenery items that allow for track sensor effects, which are actually pretty awesome. When choosing the scenery, you can filter it for each theme to help keep the theme of your park pretty consistent. Our theme is spooky, so it's time. First thing we're going to do to this park is theme our first ride, which is called the Dark Forest. I mean, it looks pretty damn shitty, but it works. Now that we've added some scenery, let's test our first ride. Okay, looking good so far. Dark Forest is a spooky good time, if I do say so myself. Oh shit! Fuck. If you do end up getting stuck while building a coaster, you could always have the game attempt to finish it, although this honestly almost never works. Alright, I got bored, so I made a new park, a new ride, and fail. Okay, a couple tweaks later and our ride is fixed. Now, I say we call this ride Fun! Also, that name makes literally no sense because there's practically nothing happening. I've gotten a little off track here and I've kind of been all over the place with this review so far, so let me back up a bit. Going back to the whole goals thing. Each one pretty much comes down to the same few practical principles. Make rides, have toilets, sell food, plant stuff, yay. Although building roller coasters definitely achieves the most goals overall, it also requires the most work, obviously. Of course, if you're a lazy piece of shit like me, you could always just sit back and almost do no work. Like this. I just placed down a few random standalone rides and now we're good to go. So yeah, now we can just watch the kiddies go down the slide. Yeah, what a riot. And this? They actually enjoy this shit? But bottom line is that all the goals here really do come down to just building coasters. I mean, you could place down your own rides, but it's not going to achieve nearly as much as it would, whereas if you build a roller coaster. Now, something I should talk about next is the guests. You can listen to your guests for help if you get stuck in anything, which I guess is pretty helpful. Their thoughts will usually contain insightful hints to help you improve the park and change what you need to do accordingly. Like this one. Too intense for me? Are you fucking kidding me? On second thought, you could always just do the opposite of what they say to mess with them. Now, we've talked here and there about career mode, but honestly, the best way to play this game is sandbox mode. This mode gives you free reign to create anything with unlimited money and absolutely no restrictions. When I was a teenager, I'd always start some crazy ambitious rides and parks which I'd never end up opening because, well, I'd never complete them. This right here is a good example of something you could create in sandbox mode with its full capabilities, but it's also a good example of a project I never finished. Many of these types of projects are made possible with the use of custom scenery, which was a huge deal when this game was popular. Here's some camping custom scenery I have, because for whatever reason, it's the only scenery pack I have currently installed. Like I had stated earlier, during this game's heyday, many people on the internet had actually recreated Disneyland and Disney World attractions within the game using custom scenery. And they're scary accurate. This one right here is definitely one of my favorites. Like, holy shit! That is impressive. User-created content is awesome and all, but the game itself did already have quite a bit of content in the first place, as there were already 2 expansion packs released for the game. The first one, titled Soaked, allowed you to create pools and water slides as well as the addition of new maps. It also gave you the ability to make your own fireworks show. But honestly, I have no clue what the fuck to even do here. I think you just place them down or some shit. It's kind of similar to video editing or sound editing tracks within a program or software, you know, but I already have to do that later with this video, so Fuck it, let's skip it. The other expansion pack, titled Wild, allowed you to add zoo animals and safaris to your game. You just drop the box and BAM! There's your animals. It's as simple as that. The animals are fun to watch because they'll actually taunt each other, which is always great, and they can even escape. Okay, that's just too amusing. I love how he's all casual and everyone is just running for the hills. Oh, too many animals? Well, no shit, look at this mess. Doing stuff like this and screwing with your guests and employees is some of the most fun you'll have in the game. For instance, if you really want to be an asshole, you can raise the prices. We can just charge like crazy for a shit park. I don't know though, you'd pay $20 for a cheeseburger in the first place, right? Oh shit, the park really is getting a little out of control though. The controls seem to have failed on one of our rides. Well, let's just grab our trusty old mechanic. Oh damn, what the fuck? That was weird. Anyway, we'll pick him up and we'll make him fix it. Or, we can do this instead. Yeah, I like that. What's this? Yeah, I think I'm good. Thanks though. Alright, we've laughed, we've cried, we've had some fun, but honestly, I gotta end this review at some point, so I'm just gonna give my closing thoughts now. Honestly, playing this game again was a real treat. Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 can overall be a blast, and it still carries a certain charm that most games in the genre just simply don't have today. It was a great sandbox game that quickly became a classic. Even today, this game is truly something special and something exciting, but if you do get bored with it, you could always build a death park. If you've ever played a game in this series, then you know exactly what that is. It's basically a park where we kill everyone. And that's really it, actually. My personal favorite is this one. Just a straight drop and boom! Or we could just build a fun little water coaster. I'm sorry, friends. And our next subject of my absolute pleasure... Just too entertaining. Have a question, comment, or concern? Or maybe you just want to know more about upcoming videos? Check me out and follow me on Twitter for exclusive updates and more. Hello everybody, thank you for watching the newest episode of the Retrospect Lounge. If you missed either of the last two spooky Halloween themed episodes, go check those out. On the left, a game review for A Nightmare on Elm Street on the NES. And on the right, a game review for Halloween on the Atari 2600. It's pretty awesome.